Persona 4 Remake is fast approaching, especially since Atlus registered a new domain, p4re.jp. And unless that acronym stands for Persona 4 Research Excursions, then this is our strongest evidence yet that P Studio is already working on Persona 4 Rewind, or Persona 4 Replay, or Persona 4 Rewatch. Well, no matter. It's similar to what they did 3 years ago when they were developing Persona 3 Reload. Now, as a Persona fan myself, I'm ecstatic that Persona 4 is next in line for a modern makeover. Although I understand why some people are upset that you and the investigation team are getting the remake treatment first, instead of much older games like Persona 1 and 2, as well as other titles under the Mega 10 franchise. And to be fair to them, the S-Link Persona trilogy have been eating all of the attention. Like having fun spin-off games from Dancing All Night to a gacha game that won't go global. Then binge-worthy anime and movie adaptations, although A1 Pictures did Persona 5 dirty. I mean, look at Joker, he looks like a goblin. We even have stage plays, and on top of that, we can wear them as shoes. At this point, Toaster Aegis is eminent. So I really can't blame the fans of the classic for being dismayed that their games are once again ignored by Daddy Atlus. However, there's a lot of good reasons why Persona 4 deserves this remake, and why this is a great business decision by SEGA Atlus. But before that though, if you're excited to crush tarot cards again in Persona 4 Remake, then like this video and join Otaku Define for more Persona content.
My fried tofu.
Persona 4 deserves a remake, especially since it's been nearly 2 decades since its release. The OGP4 came out in 2008, back when you had to delete text to free up memory. And considering that Persona 3 Reload came out 18 years after the OGP3, it will be conventional for Persona 4 to have a remake after 18 years as well. It's like these games need to be of legal age before getting a makeover. Additionally, Persona 4 is known for reusing assets from Persona 3. As P4 was built upon the same engine and retained a number of underlying systems, models, and gameplay mechanics. The school trip is the most evident of this, as we get to revisit Gekkoukan High and Port Island, and it also graces us with one of the funniest moments in Persona, the unforgettable King's Game scene. Thanks to this efficient development process, the devs managed to create Persona 4 in just 18 months. So once again, it would be completely conventional for Persona 4 Replay to reuse assets from Persona 3 Reload. At this point, it's practically destiny. Although I know some people would argue that Persona 4 doesn't deserve a remake, considering that Persona 4 Golden is still very much playable and accessible in all modern consoles. Even though P4G came out in 2012, back when everyone thought that PS Vita will be the biggest handheld, it doesn't mean that it's too young to get a remake. Especially considering that Persona 4 Golden is not a remake of Persona 4. It's barely a remaster, and most people would describe it as an enhanced port, since P4G still retained the core structure and gameplay of the original. In contrast, a remake involves rebuilding a game from the ground up, often paired with significant changes to graphics and gameplay mechanics. And honestly, whenever I go back to Persona 4 Golden after playing Royal and Reload, the gameplay is noticeably outdated. The turn-based UI in P4G now feels clunky. I constantly forget how tedious it is to scroll through multiple menus just to execute a single attack. Meanwhile, P3R and P5 streamlined combat with dedicated buttons per specific commands made the turn-based system feel much more fluid and dynamic. Essentially, Persona 4 Golden is an enhanced re-release of Persona 4, similar to how Persona 5 Royal and Persona 3 FES expanded their base games. Since P4G also introduced several new features, including the addition of Mari as a new character, an Adachi social link, extra story content, a new endgame dungeon, and of course, extra personas. Thus, saying that Persona 4 doesn't need a remake because it already has Persona 4 Golden is misleading. But then, Persona 1 and 2 are much older. Doesn't that make them a more valid candidate for a remake? While the age of a game is a reasonable point to give them a remake, it's not the deciding factor. Just look at Final Fantasy, where Square Enix chose 7 first among older titles like 6 and 4. Sega Atlus chose to remake P4 first as it complements their existing business model. as Persona 4 Remake can leverage existing assets from Persona 3 Reload. This will make its development process much more efficient and reduce its development time, like what happened before. Moreover, P4 is easily associated with P3 and P5, such as their recurring themes and storytelling, where all three games explore psychological and societal issues through their narrative. They also share similar gameplay mechanics and structure, as all of these three games follow the social sim and dungeon crawler hybrid format introduced in Persona 3. They also have the calendar system to manage their daily lives, both as a student and saving the world from a deranged deity. They also have a turn-based combat with the One More system, the use of the Velvet Room to fuse new personas, and the social link system that really defined this trilogy. This association is deeply rooted as to what Persona games are today. So much so that if you say a game plays like Persona, people will immediately think of romanceable characters, a school setting, iconic soundtracks by Shoji Meguro and Lotus Juice, sleek art style, and a UI that belongs in a museum. Add to that since Persona 4 is closely tied to Persona 3 and Persona 5, marketing it becomes much easier, as newcomers would feel a sense of familiarity even if they haven't played it before. And not to mention the numerous promotional materials that always include the protagonists of these three games, and sometimes Kotone. Even in crossovers, these three games are often grouped together, from Persona Q to P5X collaborating with Persona 3. This is why remaking and marketing Persona 1 and Persona 2 would be a major challenge. These games feel so disconnected from the current Persona formula that many people wouldn't even recognize them as part of the series. Their gameplay is vastly different. Persona 1 features first-person dungeon crawling, while Persona 2 uses an isometric perspective. Both rely on random encounters and straight narrative. Then the lack of social link system and calendar mechanics that made the series so iconic and beloved today is not present. Although I do find their shadow recruitment more charming. I mean, can you imagine using the power of rock and roll to recruit shadows? So it's a no-brainer that SEGA Atlus decided on Persona 4 Remake first than the older titles, given its widespread recognition and popularity. But could developing Persona 4 Remake come at a cost? Would it delay projects like Persona 6 or other Megaton titles? Not at all. Again, Persona 4 Remake will leverage on Persona 3 Reload's existing assets and frameworks on its game engine, thus reducing development time. SEGA Atlus also have different teams for developing games, with P Studio focusing on Persona titles and Studio Zero who is now moving on to other stuff after the success of Metaphor. It's highly likely that the team who handled Persona 3 Reload is also going to helm Persona 4 Replay, while a separate division would focus on Persona 6. It's even reported that SEGA are looking to expand their development teams through hiring and M&A. Case in point, SEGA Atlus announced in the recent Nintendo Switch Direct the return of Raido, proving that they are on top with their release schedule and everything is running smoothly. So it's most likely that they will stick with their proven strategic release schedule, as they tend to stagger the releases of their games to avoid cannibalizing sales, unlike Koei Tecmo here, which released 3 new games in a span of 3 weeks. How am I supposed to play all of this? Lastly, Persona 4 Remake makes sense because it is a low-risk project that can fund future ambitious Atlus titles. Remember that Persona 3 Reload launched as their fastest-selling game to reach 1 million copies. SEGA Atlus knows that there is a high demand for this type of game. As like P3R, Persona 4 Remake appeals to the nostalgia of older players, while Persona 6 can further target newer ones, thus reducing any internal competition. Now this is more of a personal take, but I really want to see our prefecture in the current Persona style. Given that both P3 and P5 took place in Tokyo, where Iwatodai and Tatsumi Port are loosely based on Minato, then P5 is set in Shibuya as well as other famous places in Tokyo, so seeing Yamanashi again in the form of Inaba warms my heart. That's why I'm really excited for Persona 4 Remake, and I think it will come out in 2026, so mark your calendars. Speaking of calendars, the calendar system is a core part of Persona. Without it, the game will be so boring. If you're curious about that, then check this video out. Join Otaku Define for more Persona content. This is Math, and stay awesome, my dudes.